The history of railroads in Indiana began in earnest in 1838, when the first steam train traveled from North Madison to Graham's Ford, carrying Governor James Wallace, Legislators, and other dignitaries on an 8-mile-per-hour, 15-mile inspection trip. However, in 1832 most state funds were committed to building canals. In 1848, 1,015 miles of canals linked Indiana to the eastern seaboard. In 1836, Governor Noah Noble signed the Act to Provide for a General System of Internal Improvements, which authorized the borrowing of up to $10,500,000 for projects including the completion of the Wabash and Erie and a new railroad from Madison to Lafayette via Indianapolis. The Madison Line provided lessons to inexperienced American railroad builders on the slopes that railroads can safely travel. They needed to use 8-horse hitches to haul cars up the grade. Downgrade caused even more problems because of the high speeds. It often would result in injury and death. Early locomotives were not nearly as fast as modern-day solutions, at an average of 15 miles per hour, but it was much faster than a boat or carriage. The first locomotive to run in Indiana was the four-wheeled Elkhorn of British design. However, it was not suitable for the landscape, and was quickly replaced with a 420 locomotive design by Baldwin Locomotive Company. Indiana's second and third locomotives, the Madison and the Indianapolis, were of this manufacture. Railroads were originally backed by state initiative as a way to link waterways and transportation for crops to eastern markets, utilizing the interior farmland of the state. By 1847, public financing gave way to private companies. Growth became much quicker, and excitement over the expected 500 miles by 1852 was popular. In the 1850s, the railroad was imperative to the development of Indiana, the bulk of new construction creating rail lines to the west. The years following the Civil War saw Indiana railroads providing increased passenger transportation, plus delivery of fuel and raw materials to fuel Indiana's growing manufacturing business. The advent of the railroad was like Providence for many young men in Indiana. They turned to it for employment in a field that filled their imagination with the romance of the rails. Many became employed for long periods of time. Indianapolis emerged as a major hub for rail traffic, and the first major city whose growth was due to railroads. In 1830, the largest city in Indiana was New Albany, with a population of 2,079. Indianapolis was barely a town. The first train didn't appear in Indy until 1847, but by 1850, Indianapolis's population was almost that of New Albany. The capital's population easily passed all others. Indianapolis was thereafter referred to as the City of Railroads. By 1850, the city was the hub of 7 major railroads, and as the crossroads of America, it created the first Union Station. All the trains and railroads passed through one major station. This was a feat that no other major city had accomplished so far. Overall, the railroad brought development, jobs, and trade to the former wilderness of Indiana. But with good things comes people who want to exploit them. There were no railroad police at the time, and usually no other forms of law enforcement. Vigilante groups were haphazardly attempting to maintain order, but they were rarely more productive than damaging. Losses mounted, as it was easy for an organized criminal group to exploit a train. They often carried valuables without much protection. On October 6, 1866, the first known train robbery took place. 3 masked bandits boarded an Ohio-Mississippi train after it departed Seymour, Indiana. John and Simon Reno and Franklin Sparks knocked the guards unconscious before pushing 2 safes containing a total of $45,000 out of the moving train and making their escape. Another thing the railroads lacked was safety precautions. Many injuries occurred when people tried to cross the railroad tracks. There were almost no signs and no warning that a train was going to pass soon. While attempting to cross the Monon Railroad, Roland, 17-year-old son of John Bush, got his foot caught between the tracks. His right leg was cut completely off at the hip, his left arm was cut off at the elbow, and his skull was severely fractured. This was only one of many fatalities that occurred when the railroad was in early construction. With this early boost in development came almost no precaution at all.